skipper, as the hourglass trickled away the minutes to midnight and the change of watch. The ship had been brand new when she left the Netherlands, but she was weathered now. Her upper works, which had been painted pale green, with embellishments in red and gold, were chipped and worn and scoured by sea salt. Her bottom, which had once been smooth and clean, was now festooned with so many barnacles and weeds that their drag slowed her progress north. And her hull, built though it was from oak, had been subjected to every conceivable extreme of temperature, so that it now shuddered as the ship rolled in the swell. First the Batavia's timbers had swollen in the northern winter, for she had left Amsterdam late the previous October, when the northern seas were already cold and stormy. Then they had been shriveled by the sun as the ship sailed along the fever coasts of Africa, swung west on passing Sierra Leone, and crossed the equator, headed for Brazil. Off the coast of South America, she had at last turned east, picking up a current that carried her to the Cape of Good Hope, and then fierce easterlies that took her through the roaring Forties and the Southern Ocean, where it was winter once again, and perpetual gales hurried her onward, between the barren little islets of St. Paul and Amsterdam, and into the unknown waters to the east. At least it was warmer now, and the storms had abated as the Batavia headed north after more than 7 long months at sea. But the endless discomforts of the voyage had, if anything, grown worse, and outweighed the slow improvement in the weather. The fresh food was long gone. The water was alive with worms, and below deck the ship herself stank of urine, unwashed bodies, and stale breath. Worst of all, in its own way, was the plodding monotony of the endless days at sea, which ate away the spirit of the passengers and undermined the efficiency of the crew. At 12, the watch changed. The new watch, the midnight watch, was always acknowledged to be the most difficult and dangerous of all. Working conditions were at their worst, and the alertness of the men could not always be taken for granted. For these reasons, it was customary for the skipper himself to be on deck by night, and as the last grains of sand slid through the glass, a small doorway opened on one of the upper decks, and he came up. The master of a Dutch East Indiaman was a man who enjoyed almost unlimited power in his small kingdom. He commanded a ship that had cost 100,000 guilders to build, and contained a cargo that, in the Indies trade, was worth twice as much again. He was charged with the safe navigation of his vessel, and responsible for the lives of all the hundreds of souls under his command. But, on the Batavia, as on every other Dutch East Indiaman, the skipper was also the subordinate of an officer who typically had no experience of the sea and little understanding of how to manage a ship. This man was the upper merchant, or supercargo. He was, as his title implied, a commercial agent who bore responsibility of ensuring that the voyage was a profitable one for his own masters, the directors of the Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie, the United East India Company, which owned the ship. In the first half of the 17th century, the VOC was not only the most important organisation and one of the largest employers in the United Provinces of the Netherlands, it was also the wealthiest and most powerful company on earth. It had become wealthy and powerful by putting trade and profit ahead of every other consideration. Thus the supercargo and his deputy, the under-merchant, had the authority to order the skipper to make sail, or stay at anchor in some fly-blown port until the holds were full, even if death and disease were striking down the crew. The master of a Dutch East Indiaman was therefore in rather an unusual position. He was expected to combine the powers of seamanship and leadership that have always been demanded of any skipper, with a degree of tact and even submissiveness that did not often come easily to men hardened by many years at sea. He had command of his ship from day to day, it is true, but he might at any moment be given an order he would be expected to obey. He could set a course, but did not decide where his ship was heading. In port, he had